back to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. I'm pumped up for today's topic. Just my co-podcaster here, Ian, and I spinning some stuff to everybody related to a property that mostly he took down 5 years ago, and we're going to recap it. It's Whitehouse Manor in Baltimore, Maryland. And if you tuned in a few years ago, one of the episodes that we did was the breakdown of the opportunity. It was if you're probably familiar with this after I tell you, but Ian and his partner Dan were able to secure the project at 90% seller financing, and then they raised 10%. They obviously put some of their own funds in and then raised some of the money as well. That's why I said we, because my partner Chris and I do have a sliver of ownership interest in this as well. So we have a little bit of a vested interest. But, we typically talk about acquisitions a lot. We don't necessarily talk about the other side of it. And yes, the property is still on their books. It's not sold, although it was refinanced and investors were paid out. But let's go through that. Let's go through where am I now? I think a lot of a lot of people only see kind of the what if shiny object of oh man, you bought this property, $5 million, 90% seller financing, you only had to raise under $1 million. This is great. 87 units, 67 units, 68 units, 76 units. I was close. 76 units. That's awesome, right? And then they kind of put this vision. They each have their vision of how it will play out. But let's talk reality of how it's played out. There's things that have changed over the last 5 years. Interest rates have gone up. There's an argument that parts of Baltimore City, Baltimore County have decreased. Some of the properties had turnovers, right? What were the turnover costs compared to what was pro forma out? So, things happen, and they're not just happen on a pro forma. Everything always happens differently, some better, some worse than expected. So let's do a quick breakdown. Maybe let's just do a quick breakdown for the viewers of when you bought that property and what the numbers look like.
Yeah, we bought the 76 unit apartment building for right around $5 million plus or minus. We put right around $1 million into it, $500,000, somewhere around there. And we refinanced it for $6.8 million with a 9.5, 9.7 valuation at the time. That was in 2022, and allowed that to get us to have a major advance in our real estate careers. At the time, everything was looking up. And we thought that it was it can only go up. It can only go up. We got this, no problem. And in real time, shortly after purchasing, we had someone offer us $8.8 million on a 1031 exchange. And I'll tell you my thoughts on that in a second. Today, we still have all 76 units online. We're still operating where we want to be. However, operating costs have skyrocketed, and rent is not pacing equally as fast as the increase in expenses. And it's causing an issue because now we're starting to outpace our equity because the cash flow is not keeping up with our equity in the property. And there's a lot of challenges, a lot of bumps and bruises that have taken place. And I'll let Jason walk us down that road to get where we are today. And then I'll give you guys my outlook of what I should have done maybe in real time versus what we actually did.
So what do you want me to just discuss?
No, I don't know. I figured you were going to walk us down the road because I'll just ramble. But anyways,
I'm happy to. What road do you want to walk down? So just to recap, so you purchased it in 2020, right?
Yep.
In 2022, you refinanced it, $6.8 million refinance, $9.5 million. Appraisal at the time, all the investors got paid out. Well, all the investors got their money back, and then they didn't get anything more, right? They just got their money back, and then you retain the difference in an operating account.
No. Everyone got that. Was probably a mistake that we made, not knowing. We actually took all the money and distributed it and did not leave a lot of capital in the bank because we're this will be fine. No big deal, right? And we said, let's just distribute all the capital. What could possibly go wrong over the next few years? So that was probably a mistake that we made along the road, to be transparent about it.
Got it. Okay. And on average, like what % occupancy do you guys have there?
Normally we operate in like the 90% range. Right now we toggled it back because we finally got the last 12 units that we want to renovate. We finally got them vacated, and we're actually in a position that we were able to keep them vacant and start renovating them as we see fit as we move forward, which is, causing some issues today, but that little bit of pain's allowing us to renovate the last of the units and delivering a completely stabilized product to the market to maximize the value because, right, we're combating interest rates, we're combating expenses, we're combating a lot of things. So we're trying to squeeze out this value that we once had in the high 8s, early 9s. We're trying to fight to get back to that, and it's a lot of work to get back to there. I think today we're probably sitting right around, an $8 million early 8s number. So to squeeze out the last little bit of equity, we really have to get the last of them turned over.
What and just for somebody kind of listening, when they think of even an amortized loan, right?
Correct.
What do you think the payoff amount is now, 3 years later? Any idea?
I think we're averaging about $150,000 a year of pay down. So
yeah, so we call it 6.4, 6.3.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Just curious, because the reason I'm getting at that is, I think that's obviously a major benefit of time is on your side, right? On the amortization cycle, and that's a real thing. And I think as real estate investors, sometimes you look at your projects and you're like, man, I didn't really take any money out of this, or I'm kind of breaking even. But like you look back in the past, and you're like, yeah, you're broken even, but like, you're pretty far along your amortization cycle, and you might have whatever on a small property, $20,000 in equity, $100,000 in equity, $1 million in equity, even though it broke even, you didn't take cash out. Now, is that worth keeping around? Maybe not. But that's all. That's a real economic kind of factor that you have to look into. What are some of the challenges that you feel like you learned from over the last few years?
I would say a few of the challenges is that when things are going good, it's hard to see that there's ever going to be a time when there's going to be a bad, because it's not just like a magic light switch, but you see the slowdown in the market. I would say another learning lesson is not to distribute all the cash. We should have reserved that out in a different fashion, but we thought we were doing the right thing and dispersing all the cash, not knowing. And then I would say the final one is honestly like for what our equity is today and the challenges that we've gotten through to preserve that position. We should have just sold it for $8.8 million when that guy came along on that 1031 exchange and just sold it in real time to keep the bandwidth free. And it would have produced more cash. It would have been, instead of a 7-figure payday, it might have been, a few 7 figures payday, right? And, you take on the challenge because there's ego, there's staffing, there's all these things that take place. You fall in love with the property. You do this, you do that. Oh, we just collect properties. And I would say that's probably a big mistake that we've made. We've had a few opportunities to sell some of our assets, and we've always kind of said no. And I think we should have looked more into saying yes, and exploring it and having better bailouts. So I would say not being good sellers of assets is probably a mistake we've made.
Yeah, I think if somebody interviewed us 5 years ago, and we probably have this on record on this podcast, but we were both opposites, and we probably are more both in the middle now. And what I mean by opposites is I'm all about quick hits. Like, hey, you got $1 million in equity very, very quickly. Like, sell that crap, turn that into something else, right? Like, that's one side. Ian's like, yeah, we got that, but like we can continue to grow this. Like, why sell this? Then what are we going to put it into? And I do see both sides of it. And I think both of us communicating regularly, related deals and other stuff, we probably are both now a little bit more in the middle, right? Like there's a time to sell, there's a time to hold on some of these things. And here's the other thing: you're never going to time the market right? Like I sold, all of our rental properties, early-ish COVID, and since then, a lot of those areas have doubled in value. And but also we were coming on, owning stuff from 2012, 2013, 2014. I think the latest one was 2015. So we already had like a good run with some of those. They'd already, increased in value, right? It's like, hey, it's time to take chips off the table. And I didn't know, like we took them off too early, but that's okay. We still got them off. Like there's always a bright side. Like there's nothing bad, with funds and cash in your pocket. Assume, especially if you're opportunistic, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know if I would have, if I was able to turn that capital into as much as I would have turned it into if I had held it longer. But then but then here's the other side. You hold it too long and then you miss that mark. And then who knows? Who knows if you have the opportunity to exit. So there's no right or wrong. Yeah, I think it's good to be open-minded about both.
Yeah, I think we've probably held too long. And we probably should have executed quicker. Some of it's an ego gut check. Some of it's like, oh, I got all this set up and all these other things, but you don't realize the liquidity you need later. And it's like owning real estate's cool and cash flow is quote unquote cool. But there's a lot of, pain and benchmarks that come along with that, because recently my litmus test has been, okay, well, if I have a single family property that makes me $500 a month, right? And I could take that money, or I'm sorry, $5,000 a year, right? $400 a month, but I could sell it and make $50,000. Yes, there's a tax. I don't want to get into the debate of taxes, but if I can net down $50,000, which a lot of assets that we've owned for a period of time now, we have this equity, our cash flow is outpacing it, because all I have to do is go find an operator like myself, like Jason, wherever, and just say, hey, I'll give you this money. I'll lend you this money. And, I want to make whatever, 10%, 13%, whatever it is. And the work is, well, I don't want to minimize Jason's job or the job of being a family office. In the same sense, we're taking on a lot of like headaches and trouble and trials and tribulations versus utilizing the capital. I guess that's a position that I'm not used to being in, of having capital available. The problem is we're very, 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 very illiquid right now because we own a lot of assets, and that's hard, right? Versus saying, well, if I just sold these, liquidated the equity, I'd be more liquid and I would have more opportunities. And I have multiple ways today to fund those opportunities. Whereas before, it's like I knew one thing and one thing only: to get out of my job, I had to do X, Y, and Z. Now that I've done that, the mode has changed a little bit. And I think we need to do a better job of, revisiting our goals, our aspirations, our visions, our everything, to be able to put the money to work in more of a family office hedge fund type setting and say X% allocated to this type of cash flowing asset that's semi-liquid. This one is this liquid bucket. This one's this illiquid bucket. And when we buy a piece of real estate, we know that money's tied up forever. And if we sell, then great. And we should always be sellers to the market. I've been talking with a guy that I become friendly with up here in Philadelphia, and we've had a lot of conversation. He's like, I list everything at stupid prices. I don't care. I just put them up. We'll see what happens. And if they sell, they sell. If they don't, they don't. I don't really care. But at least they're always for sale. And someone that you'll never expect will pay you a stupid price. And he's like, I just always remain liquid. I was like, yeah, that's
his are all publicly listed with brokers?
Some public, some just pocket listed, some just, he's a mover and shaker in the market, right? And I think we kind of became lazy in ways with some of those things and not being movers and shakers in the market. And it's really hard. And then you become lazy in your management style. And the next thing you become that mom and pop operator that you bought it from because you're not as aggressive or as passionate about that same asset as you once were, right? Or it's like, well, this is working, whatever. It produces X number of dollars a month. I don't really care what happens, right? So,
yeah. I mean, and keep in mind, like, nothing typically will outperform like a value add massive appreciation property, right? Like it increases in value just so much higher than anything else. So like I think as like a bystander, and I'm not actively doing this, but I think as a bystander, it's like, hey, after that value add is completed, it's time to exit. I mean, I'm not saying I'm right about that. I think a lot of people do value adds and then they stabilize things and they keep them forever. But it's like a lot of value adds, just like a fix and flip, right? Like here, I'll give you an example. So like, let's say you buy a property for $100,000, it needs 50 grand in work. You're into it at 150, you could sell it for 200, right? And you can make 50 grand. I get that's gross, right? And there's taxes and stuff. But then the other side of that is, hey, I'm doing that same formula, but now I'm holding it as a rental property. So that $50,000 is just equity. It's illiquid. That's fine. But I hold it as a rental property, and I cash flow like $200, $300, $500 a month. And think about that as like a small scale. Like you did the value add, you appreciated the property, you force appreciated the property, you have equity in the property, and now you're holding it on for rental income. And like, great. So now I have cash flow coming in. That's okay. There's no problem with that, right? Like, I'm not saying like, don't do that strategy. The point is like, which direction do you want to go in? Do you want that $50,000 or you want that $300 a month with $50,000 in equity? I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think diversifying into all of them is a good thing. And you kind of have to diversify all of the things. Because if you don't, because let's look at extremists on both sides, right? This is actually a really good example. The extremists on the one side is cool. You just get $50,000 hits, $50,000 hits, $50,000 hits. You're using that money to do new deals, and you're getting high tax consequences, and you have $50,000 hits, and you're having big streams of money that comes in. The other side of it, you're getting small streams of money coming in consistently. Call it passively, but you don't ever have a big hit. You don't really have any equity event unless you end up selling them. And then what it could end up happening is like, great, I got $50,000 in equity. I got $100,000 in equity. Now I got $150,000 in equity. But equity is just equity, right? It's illiquid. It doesn't turn into anything until there's an exit. So I think really the magic formula for most successful people is to do both of them. Like you got to do both of them, right?
Yeah, and I think again with real estate investing, even though we operate it as a business and we say we operate it as a business, it's also silly to think that like, you sell a property and then all of a sudden it's like a gut check. Now I got to go back to work. I got to do all these things. And I know I sit on here on this podcast and say that you always got to be reinventing. You always got to be in the game. You always got to be in the game. But sometimes it's really hard, especially when life and stuff gets in the way, that it's like, man, if I sell this asset, I got responsibility to this money to then redeploy, right? And I think some of that that's a mental mind block that takes place and that we need to get the ball rolling on. And I think if you view yourself as a family office and you always have deals coming in the door, which we do, I think it's easier when you're always selling assets, because if you're always selling assets, you always have an equity pop. And if you always have an equity pop, you have cash flow during the bottoms, you have equity pops at the tops, and you continue to move on. And I think that's a lot of people just need to remember that. And even us, and sometimes like I look back on Whitehouse and say, man, I could have, should have, would have, what? I could have sold it at the time, $8.8 million. And I was sitting there going, well, wait a second. We have a bank telling us it's worth 9.5. I'm trying to squeeze an extra 700. But now in the grand scheme of things, I probably lost 300 to 400 because now it's probably only worth 8.2, 8.3 based on where today's market is. And it's like, nobody could see the debt going up. Nobody could see expenses going up by over 100%, right? Like all these things are transpiring in real time. And while they're little hits in real time, they complicate itself when rent doesn't follow equally as much because people can't afford it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. And like going back to what I was saying about like, you kind of need both. The downfall of the fix and flip, make that $50,000 and do it again and then do it again and do it again. The downfall of that doesn't exist, year after year after year. Different cycles that exist, but like the downfall of that is one day, you'll wake up and you're not gonna buy a property for 100 that can sell for that you put in 50 that sells for 200. It might not exist, and that's why a lot of flippers, a few years started struggling a few years ago, and then they got to find other stuff in order to do. And, you know, I heard a guy say years ago, he was like, you know, my game plan is I typically buy rental properties, but like every 2 or 3 rental properties, I'll do a flip, and I'll do another flip. I'll do another flip, because you need both sides. And, you know, I think if you're just buying passive rentals all the time, and that's your entire game plan, and you never have enough liquidity, you're going to get stuck. And then on the other side, I think at some point, you know, you're just flipping properties, flip properties, flip properties. Like maybe you get some money, but then you get to the point where it's like, oh, well, there's no more money coming in because there's no more properties for me to flip. And they're envious of the landlord who's got 30 rental properties spitting out a few $100s a month passively, right? So like you can have your cake and eat it too, but like it's a diversified portfolio.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty important that, you know, you're always looking at it and figuring out different ways to make your capital work for you. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think if you lose sight of what the real goal is and where you've started and what you've done, and, you know, it's like, oh, I don't want to flip anymore. It's like, well, yeah, because everyone goes through these crazy cycles. And now looking at it, if I could just do, you know, 2 projects a year, offload a project, bring on a project or 2 a year, and just, you know, take a very easy pace, and, you know, it's much more predictable and not get it what's important. So yeah, I mean, learning lessons is always be a seller to the market. Don't trip over a penny. You know, in this case, I thought I was tripping over a few $100,000. In the grand scheme of things, it wound up costing us a few $100,000. So I think that's number one. Number two is like have a metric to compare it to, right? Like my metric is, well, if I had, you know, if I made $100,000 off the sale of this property, I have it out. And that's, I know I can make 10% on my money without trying very hard, very non-labor intensive work, right? So my litmus test in the property is, well, if the equity is not out, like if I'm making in that same $100,000 scenario, if I'm only making $10,000 a year on that $100,000, well, we should really look at selling the property, because I know I have a litmus test that's easier than dealing with all the headaches. Because rental properties are fun till they're not. And when they're good, they're good. And when they're bad, they're bad. But there is no in between. And then I'd say the final thing is really not being a good predictor of where the market was going to go. But I'll be the first to admit I'm not a savant when it comes to that. And I think, you know, nobody really is. And executing on the opportunities when you can. And, you know, I got into a group that was around where a lot of guys were like, oh, avoid the taxes, do this, do that. Well, you guys are doing all this work to avoid taxes. And my way to avoid taxes was just not selling. And I think that was kind of my issue with selling, because I hate paying taxes. And then I'm like, well, man, I tripped over pennies. Again, that's $700,000 that I tripped over. I could have just paid it in the taxes and still arrived to the same location I am today. Could have handed all that money that I received back to a Jason or a Chris type and make make similar type money with no headaches. Yeah, something goes wrong with a loan. Hey, Chris, Jason, what's going on, right? Like there are headaches. I'm not saying there's not, but in the same sense, it's a less labor intensive and much more capital intensive. And it gives you some bandwidth depending on what you want to do with your life. Now, I have some bigger aspirations. We have a bigger team. We have the wherewithal to do it. So I'll probably continue to buy real estate, but I'm always looking at it. And I use Jason and Chris as my litmus test to say, well, why do we own this property? We could just sell it, make this money, and for the same amount of money we cash flow, I could just hand it to them. And this is not a capital raising video for Jason and Chris, but it is my litmus test to say, well, I just sell it, hand them the money if they would take me on, and then I don't have to do all this hard work. I don't need all this overhead. I don't need to do all these things. I want to, but if I had to, I always have a place to park my cash.
Yeah. I mean, and the good news is like most real estate investors like yourself, they have, you know, different portfolios, different assets. It's not one deal. Like, hey, I'm banking on this one big legacy project. But you have lots of projects that go on. And, you know, some make, you know, and here's the thing. In my experience, sometimes the deals that you think are going to be the best ones aren't, and some that aren't going to be the best end up being fine. And you adapt as it's needed. Like there's lots of deals. I'll give you an example of on the loan side. There's a loan that we've been working on, or that we just got paid off on last week, and we made a decent amount of money on it, but not as much as we could have made. It was a defaulted loan. very default loan, multiple properties, super low LTV. It's been through the court system for 3 years. It's freaking annoying. And we took a reduced payoff. We didn't lose money. We made good money. We got a good rate of return. But we left money on the table. Maybe that's a better way to say it. We left money on the table because we just had enough of it. Like, let's keep it moving. We're all about getting in and out of these things. It's the same reason why, there's a property we foreclosed on. We could have just renovated that property and probably did pretty well with it, but because we got it at a good price, but we just sold it and moved on because that's what worked best. And then we kept it moving. So I think, the good part is for everybody listening or all of us is, just figure out what the best opportunity in your current time is for that. I mean, and listen, if you unload properties, just to get them off your books, just because they're either a hassle or it's like, hey, listen, I can hold on to this thing and I can make more money on it. But like, why? Like, let's keep it moving and move on to the next one. There's plenty of deals out there. Let's be honest, we're in a market right now that should have some opportunities. Like, you always need liquid powder to go out and buy deals, right? So that's, the missed opportunity cost is really it. Everybody is so freaking stubborn about getting top dollar for everything, or doing this or doing that, or, oh, I would never sell that for this price. Why not? That would enable you to potentially buy something better, right?
Correct.
Because if not, you're just not going to do it. Like, I can't tell you how many borrowers over the years have been like, oh, I'd rather not do the deal than pay 12.99% interest on it. And I'm like, okay, then don't do the deal. I mean, listen, if the deal doesn't work at that rate, I get it. But like they bought a really, really good deal. They're like, oh, it's just not worth me doing. I'm not paying that. I'm like, that's an ego, dumb thing. That doesn't make sense. The numbers either work or they don't work. But and
most of the time they should work. I mean, that 12.99 really shouldn't affect the deal if you're using the capital for the right reasons. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to, is just, really being nimble to the market and being open to the ideas, and not everything's going to fit in the perfect box. And, so what, it gets derailed, continue on and move on, like just sell or just buy or refinance, but if you're refinancing or you're doing a deal, be ready to be in there for the long term and the long haul and be capitalized correctly. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you got to pivot on your thing, you pivot. I mean, listen, how many times in the past, did you sell a property? I mean, sometimes properties are worth more than you think. Sometimes they're worth less. Like, it is what it is. It's not a huge deal. You do it and you make it work. Sometimes you cut your losses. I mean, there's been deals in the past on loans where I was like, I don't want to deal with this freaking loan anymore. I want out with this borrower. Let's just bounce. It's not even worth dealing with anymore. It's a headache. That's just what ends up happening. So everyone has their own reasons for things. But like, take your ego off of it and, figure out what the best decision is on that.
Yep.
I mean, the same reason why, like, think about it like this. The same reason sellers sell distressed properties to real estate investors at low prices is the same reason why you have to look at your portfolio and every single deal you're working on to see what makes sense. I was talking to somebody recently who needs about $300,000 out of some of their properties, and they're thinking about doing HELOCs or second mortgages. I'm like, bro, just sell one of those damn things.
Yep.
Like, what's the point of taking $300,000 HELOC, put set on your primary, doing some seconds? Right now those rates are 8-9% plus on that. Like, do the math. Like, you have some of these free and clear, you have some with low equity or high equity, low balances. Just sell one of them. Yep. Like, it financially makes more sense. Like, too many people have, jumped into real estate. Ian and I were talking about before we started. Too many people jump into real estate and got lucky based on appreciation. I mean, you're not supposed to buy a property in real estate for $100,000 and do nothing to it and it'd be worth $200,000 in 3 years. Like, that's not normal. That's not what's supposed to happen. It doesn't stay like that forever. Yep. This is for I would say, like, me personally being active, this is the second time I've seen this. I saw this, 2003-ish, kind of dabbled with stuff 3 and then was very active 4, 5, 6, 03, 04, 5. And like, I saw this, I saw title companies, mortgage companies, real estate agents just killing it. Real estate investors. Hey, you buy this property, then it's worth more. I buy this beach property, it's worth more. I buy this, it's worth more. As fast as that shit goes up is as fast as it goes down. And, we haven't podcasted about the DSCR debacle in Baltimore. We're going to do a podcast about that soon and about other things. But like, there's been writing on the wall for years of shakeup, and we'll see how it occurs. So, I think this is just a reminder that it's a witness test, that you can, like, even if you have a property that does fine and you just don't want to handle it anymore, sell it, get rid of it, clear your brain from it. It's not just the economic side of it. It's we sold our rental portfolio because I was sick and tired of it. It was annoying as crap. I had a full-time property manager that worked for us, and I was still involved. It pissed the crap out of me. I needed that mental freedom so I could focus on more productive things.
I would agree with that. And I think there's something about the cash equity, and there's the mental freedom to then come back with a clear mind and clear picture of why you're doing it and what you're doing. So there'll be more to follow on this because it's an ever-evolving story. So we'll definitely fill you in as we continue to move on and show you what's happening with the portfolio. We definitely need to do more of these update type podcasts. So we'll definitely put these in the books. And Jason's right. We need to cover the DSCR thing going on in Baltimore. And with all that being said, man, I'm, you guys got any questions, feel free to reach out. Instagram is the best way I communicate. And always happy to walk you guys through any deals that we're doing and talk about that and not shy.
And let's be honest, this Whitehouse deal we're talking about, like we're still talking about like $1 million to $2 million. No, $2 million. We're talking about $2 million in equity still. Like, it's real money. It's $2 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
This isn't like, hey, do I want to make $15,000 now, or see if I can turn that? Like, it's $2 million freaking dollars. It's a lot of freaking money, and that's the point.
Yeah, no, right, exactly. And when you talk about $2 million to then just earn a whopping 10%, which people should be jumping for joy at, even if you were super conservative at 5%, even if it was 5% that you were earning money on because you just park it in a bank account right now, it's $100,000 a year. And we grind so hard for that same $100,000. And I think that's the conversation that needs to continue on and take place. Plus it frees up your capital. It frees up company capital. It just does a lot of things for a lot of people. So with all that being said, we're always transparent and happy to share. And I'll definitely catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.